So, took a bunch of covers off of it, and yeah, it's not looking so good. Head bolts are pretty loose on there. The carburetor, working on that was the whole plan, was just take that off, but it looks like it's gonna need a lot more work than it. We got the carburetor all taken off and everything. Cleaning the carburetor right now, and it's coming really clean, so that's good. That head back on, tighten that back up. Could use a new head gasket because it's a little bit, I mean, it's blown on the side there. We'll order up some new head gaskets and possibly a carburetor kit if that carburetor is not working in its current condition. I'm not going to buy a new carburetor, I don't think, because a new Chinese one is a little out of my price range, and you cannot buy a new Briggs one. They don't sell them anymore. But you could buy a used one, I suppose, but you'd still be rebuilding it anyways. You'd be pretty much back to square one. So yeah, this is looking pretty good. So we'll get that right back together and maybe see if it starts. Got all the engine covers off now. This head is tightened up again because that was loose. It was like 4 or 5 bolts on there that were actually really loose, like hand tight. So got them tightened up now. Got that back on there with the same head gasket. And then this side, pulled this cover off just so could take a look. And sure enough, there was 2 or 3 bolts on this side as well that they weren't quite as loose, but they definitely did need some tightening. So we got them tightened up. Got the carburetor back on there. And yeah, so we're kind of working on all the cables and stuff like that right now. And it might be running tonight. We'll see if this carburetor decides to work. Got the fuel pump on there. And starting to get the engine covers back on. Just got to put that side one and then the top one back on too. Cleaning those up too before putting it on. So we'll have them on in just a second. You can see a little comparison. This is like paint damage. Well, I suppose that's still oil. But I did get it pretty clean. Especially compared to what it used to be there. I mean, I see a pretty big improvement there. So that's pretty good. We'll clean that one up and then throw that on. And then same thing with this cover here. We'll have that on there as well. It might be 1:30 in the morning, but all this work put in this thing, I think it's got to start tonight, if it will. So we're gonna give it a shot. The starting fluid here. Really gotta get a can of that stuff. It's okay though. And pull the choke all the way on. Pretty close. That fuel line needs some priming. That is better than what it was before, actually, already. There's no gas in the line, so. So that's the next day again, and I don't know if you remember, if you could hear that little like high pressure hiss sound, like when it would normally fire. That would be this cylinder. The head gasket is, even though it's just one little crack, it's apparently blown bad enough that all of the pressure from that cylinder is blowing out the head gasket. I mean, I didn't compression test it or nothing, but I can't imagine there's any compression whatsoever. It's all just flying out that head gasket. So definitely need a head gasket before this thing will run. I mean, maybe you could get it to run on one cylinder, but I think that's all it was doing anyways. When it would run on the starting fluid, I think it was just running on one cylinder. I don't think it was running on this side at all. So definitely need a fuel pump rebuild kit too, which is carburetor kit and fuel pump rebuild kit all comes as one thing on or eBay. It's really cheap. It's like $8. So I'm going to order that up, order up some head gaskets. Still need to get some part numbers on the head gaskets. I was just kind of randomly looking at some ones the other night, and there are some ones on eBay which look pretty much exactly the same, and they're about $10 each, which isn't bad. $20 for 2 head gaskets. I guess we're going to sit and wait for parts until a whole lot more happens. We'll probably still do some cleaning here and there. I did notice it could probably use some wheel bushings in the front. They're a little bit loose, and some other bushings and stuff in the steering system in the front. It's got a little bit of slop in it, so have to look at that too. But that's where we're at right now. Definitely clean out the fuel tank too. I can do that while I'm waiting for parts, because there's some stuff in the bottom of there that really shouldn't be. So I took the front wheels off, and I'm really starting to clean up all the grease and grime and stuff that's on there. Looking at the front wheels, there's a couple interesting things, like this washer someone they lost the washer, I guess. They cut out a piece of steel and they made a washer out of that. So that's okay. I got some Craftsman ones that I think that'll fit on there. Wheel bushings, I knew that the wheel bushings were bad. They got some slop in them, and obviously this bushing is not attached to the wheel anymore. I've seen a lot worse, but I would like to find some new bushings for this. Yeah. Also, the bushings that are in here that hold this rod in, those aren't fantastic anymore, so new bushings in there too. The fuel does leak at the bottom of the tank there, but that's okay. That's really minor. I think there's just a little O-ring in there, or even just tightening up that connection, because that's really loose. So it's not a surprise that that leaks. Went to grease everything up after putting it all back together, and surprisingly there's only one grease fitting that's bad, and it's this one right here. That one won't take any grease, so I'll have to replace that one. Unfortunately, I can't do it tonight. I have a pile of grease fittings somewhere. They might be in my other garage. I can't find them. It's still pretty impressive that all the rest of them did take grease. There's actually a little tube piece in the middle there too. Another thing that's really interesting, you see the globs of grease on my hand. The entire front shaft here, obviously you can see a grease fitting there, but this entire area, all the way across, if you feel it, that whole entire area is just stuffed with grease. There is so much grease all the way throughout this whole entire front bar. It's just filled with grease. I suppose that explains why it's so heavy. That tubular piece, it actually has a little hole in the side, and that grease fitting kind of sticks out, it sticks inside of there. Apparently you have to put that tube in before you slip the shaft in, and then line up the hole so that way the end of the grease fitting, the threads of it kind of go into that hole. You kind of got to tip it on the inside, but there's lots of room to work. I see now why this has to be hollow and there can't be a little plate there, because that piece has to tip to the side, go into there, and then you straighten it back out and get it to go so that grease can go in there, and then you can slide this piece in. So you got to do that. So I was cleaning a little bit underneath the hood here, and it's looking really good. But something I noticed, the PTO switch there, and then where the light goes, I have the light that's out right here. Absolutely no wires or harnesses anywhere for them, so electric PTO is not going to work on this thing. That's going to have to be completely redone from scratch if you ever want to put an attachment on here. So that kind of sucks, but that's okay. I'm guessing there is a little bit, I don't know if you can see it, there's some wires down in there that are all cut off. I'm imagining those are probably the PTO wires. They go underneath. Got that plate off. I think I'm going to clean it up and repaint it. And this gas tank now is just sitting in here, so that's pretty good. Just have to pull that fuel line off and take it out. Well, I must say that's the first. I've never pulled a motor to change a gas tank or clean a gas tank before, but apparently that's the way you got to do it. I wasn't seeing any other way this came out. It does not lift straight up at all. It slides into place. You have to slide it out forward, and of course you can't slide it out forward if the motor's there. But there's the tank, finally out, so I can get that all cleaned up now. But wow, that was a pain. I mean, I guess now I can clean under here even more. Unfortunately, you either got to pull the motor, or you got to, I suppose it would have maybe been easier to take this entire front end with the motor off, and you would have had to, the only thing I disconnected was the starter solenoid wire there. That's the only thing that had to come off to get the motor out. And then the 4 bolts, which really suck, because not only are they they're tapped into the motor there, but they also have nuts on the end, so you got to take the nuts off, and then you got to unbolt the bolts, and they're in such terrible spots. You can get that tank cleaned up and get all this cleaned up, so I'll do that. I rerouted the brake light cable kind of a little bit better. At least it's not hanging out outside and wrapped around the parking brake cable or parking brake knob anymore. So yeah, it goes underneath the frame now. Comes up through this hole for all these PTO wires that are chopped off, which do actually still go to a switch down here. And I ended up accidentally pulling out this orange wire that goes to the amp meter. It used to be in the ignition right there where that female connector is. Thank goodness I had another female connector on hand, so I'll just swap that out, crimp a new one on there, and it should be good. But yeah, it's a good thing I had all them pictures before. At least I knew where that orange wire went to. I almost thought it was in this wire nut mess, but actually it goes up to the ignition switch there. It's pretty good. It probably wouldn't have, something probably wouldn't have worked if I would have hooked that up wrong. Could have really messed something up. So it's a good thing I looked back at the pics. I got that all pretty clean, looking good. Just wiped everything down really good. I cleaned up this rubber piece and cleaned up some more rubber pieces that go around the gas tank to cushion it. And I don't know, I really should touch up that paint right there while I have everything off. I'm debating whether or not I'm going to do that or not. I think I am definitely going to paint that piece though, that goes underneath the gas tank. Or over the top of the gas tank, and then the battery sits on top of there. So I think I will clean that up at least and paint it. And I might just paint them little sections down there quick too. I'll probably do that just to make it nice. You'll never see that, but it'll keep it from going rusty. As you can see, the motor's back on there and the gas tank is back on there. Really nice and clean, looking really good. And all them wires are reattached and stuff. You know what I noticed the first couple times starting it, there was a little bit of smoke coming from the wire. Each ends of the solenoid and the starter, I think they were a little bit loose. They actually felt pretty loose. So I tightened them up. Hopefully that's not a problem no more. Otherwise that could be a bad connection there. But everything looks really clean. So I bet you they were just loose. And if they're tight, that should make a difference. Got a couple more wires in there fixed. And yeah, the wires are looking a little bit better, somewhat. All the motor mounts are tightened up now, so that motor moves with the body of the mower. So that's good. It's on there super tight now. It's not going nowhere. Well, I must say I'm pretty surprised. So I took off this Arrow's fuel line with its old filter, which actually looking at it, it doesn't look that bad. So, but it's good to replace it anyways. And here's the old part again with that little pre-filter on it, the rubber grommet. And the little angle there, and check that out, brand new Oregon part with the fuel shutoff, which is really cool. This was $9, which is a lot for something that you fit in your hand, but a lot of times the parts go that way. So there's a little plastic tube that covers up that filter to keep it from getting all bent up. There's part number in case you need it. And then we got for the rubber grommet, it's actually a Tecumseh part. And there's part number for that. That goes in the fuel tank. And the reason why this one has like a little edge on it there, a little lip on it, that's just because it's been sitting in the tank for so long and it expanded outwards. But the way you work the new one is it's got threads on it, and you thread them threads into the rubber grommet. It makes the rubber grommet expand, and that's the way it works. But yeah, so it's got a really nice pre-filter on there. So you know what? I'm debating whether or not you even need a fuel filter. It's looking like I don't think this had a filter on it to begin with, because they didn't cut the fuel line. They just added in the filter, because if you look, this line going to the tank, there is still plenty of slack in that line. I'm trying to think like, geez, how was there ever that much on there? That's crazy. So if I do put a filter in between, I think I'm going to cut this hose just in half and then stick a filter between there. But I'm debating whether or not I'm going to even do that or not with that nice pre-filter on there. I suppose it would be really nice to have an actual filter element in there. So that's what we're going to do. So I'll get started on that. I'll put that in. Got that all on there. It's on there pretty good. I am going to add a filter in. I have a filter I have a ton of filters just lying around, and I got a bunch of extra line just lying around too. So I'll add that in later because this actually is not routed in the correct way. It when the engine covers are on, this comes out straight, goes across, and then goes down and in. I'm gonna throw these parts I painted last night on. They turned out really good. There's just one thing about when you're painting any kind of parts, you gotta really make sure that battery ground cable grounds to this. When you bolt this down, that battery ground cable goes on there. So you gotta make sure you clean the paint off wherever that bolt is gonna go that does the ground. That way it can still ground. So I am gonna do that. That goes on top of the tank there, and then the strap goes over the top of the battery once the battery's in. Got that back on there. And I cleaned up all the connections. I took all the paint off, and I even went with the Dremel and I cleaned up the ends of these terminals on the battery. I'm not super happy with that. That's as far as that goes in there because of the hole, and that little spade connector is not quite big enough for the bolt that's going through. Yeah, there's the old one. And I got one right here. That's going to be a lot better. That fits over the bolt. I did grind down the bottom of the bolt a little bit on the bottom of the head. So, yeah, we'll swap them out, put that on. I don't know about you, but I hate the way the crimp connectors look. They look so unprofessional. So what I always do is I rip the plastic piece off, and then I crimp them down, and I put a piece of heat shrink tubing over the top of it. It looks so much better that way. So that's what I'm going to do there. We'll make that connection look a little bit better, too. I'm not sure what that is. That's definitely not stock, though, that's for sure. Somebody else's wiring job, but it's probably necessary, so we'll put it on there and we'll make it look a little bit better too. So I'll do that quick. And there we go. That looks a lot better, and yeah, that's going to be a lot better connection too. So we'll throw the battery on now. Something kind of nice. The last person, when they put that strap on, they cut like a little piece of an old tire inner tube out and put that as a little cushion between the battery and the strap, but it's not cut very nice and it's kind of falling apart. And I think after straightening that piece out, I think I'm gonna have to double that over, and there's not enough rubber there to do it. Luckily, I just took a tire off a rim that had an inner tube in it, so I got it right here, and we'll cut a piece out of that. Got that strip of rubber cut out. Turned out really good, actually. I did it about 2 inches wide. Ended up being a little bit too wide. I think it's probably, I don't know, around 1.25 inches or so. But that'll just sit on top of the battery there, folding in half. And then the strap will go over the top of that, so I'll throw that strap on. Cleaned up all the battery terminals. I put some new washers on this one. I didn't have any, but yeah, I polished everything up. So that should be a real good connection now. Slip this boot back over the top of the positive. Make sure there's no metal exposed anymore. It's a little bit of a tight fit for this one. I think it's made for a different type of battery. That's okay though. Got that on. So I'm curious now. Let's see. I don't think everything should be pretty good. We'll see if it starts. Or if it turns over, it's not going to start. Or as long as it turns over, we'll have good power. And it does. So that's pretty good. Alright, let me show you what I got here. Just pour a little bit of gas in the carburetor. This fuel pump ain't working. And the carburetor doesn't work the greatest either, but it does work okay. Honestly, probably even just rebuilding that fuel pump might be enough. I'm just going to dribble a little bit of gas in there. And once this runs out, it's out. The fuel pump's not going to do us any good. So it should start on that. And I wanted to make sure the transmission wasn't shot. So I threw it into gear too. To work, so let's see if I can show you as well. I'll go in reverse first and then forward. I have no brakes whatsoever, so I should really get those fixed too. I'm going to fix them next, I think. That's all I can show you right now. Unfortunately, it's a little bit tricky when you don't have any gas, when it can't run for more than 2 seconds, but it does move.